When you choose to earn your degree online from Southern New Hampshire University, you're saying yes to new opportunities and to new adventures. You're saying yes to something big, something you've always wanted to do. If earning your degree is one of your goals this new year, SNHU can help you get there. With low online tuition, no set class times, and multiple term starts per year, you can set the pace that works for you and save money along the way. Visit snhu.edu today to get started.
Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show on which we explore the mystery of the human personality and the human adventure, all through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, your producer and co-host. Hey, really excited to have you all here today, folks. We've got a really great guest. I mean, this interview goes deep right out of the gate, people. I'm talking about Enneagram 8 guest, Christina Rasmussen. She is an acclaimed grief educator and best-selling author of Second Firsts, Where Did You Go? And Invisible Loss. And she has a brand new book that she is just now releasing called Invisible Loss, Recognizing and Healing the Unacknowledged Heartbreak of Everyday Grief. And in this book, she gives us a framework for recovery from unrecognized grief and teaches us how to stop living in survival mode. You're going to love this. She helps us identify invisible losses. She helps us identify our 3 inner narrators, how to interrupt survival thoughts. On and on, this book is chock full of things that will help you identify and work through grief, whether you know you have the grief or not. So you're going to want to listen to this interview, and you're going to want to go get that book for sure. Invisible Loss, Recognizing and Healing the Unacknowledged Heartbreak of Everyday Grief. Again, talking about Christina Rasmussen, Enneagram 8. That's it for me, Anthony Skinner. And now, without any further ado, here is the host of our show, Ian Cron.
Hello, Typology family. Welcome back to the podcast on which we explore the mystery of the human adventure and the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. I'm here with my good friend, as always, Anthony Skinner. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You know, I am particularly stoked about our guest today. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Next week will be the 1-year anniversary of my mom's death.
Right.
And I have spent some time in recent weeks thinking a lot about her. Like our guest, my mom was a 8 on the Enneagram. Wow. And as you know, I also have a child who is an 8 on the Enneagram, my oldest.
Wow.
And so I have a rich affection. Particularly, I'm just going to say I have a rich affection for women 8s. You know, I mean, it's natural, right? I was raised by a woman 8. So I'm so glad to welcome to our program Enneagram 8, Christina Rasmussen. She is the author of the new book, Invisible Loss. And we are going to be talking about grief and about the human adventure through the eyes of an Enneagram 8. Christina, welcome to Typology.
Ian, thank you so much for having me here. And 2 questions came to me immediately as you were sharing about your mom, and I'm so sorry you lost her. And the fact that I'm an 8 like your mom, I felt something when you said that, and I'm like, there's definitely a connection here. And then I thought to myself, what are you? What number are you, Ian?
Yes. So I am an Enneagram 4.
Okay.
And the 4s are people who are motivated by a need to feel special and unique in order to compensate for what they perceive is a essential quality missing in their core makeup.
Wow.
That they don't really quite know how to name or to give language to, but they feel kind of ashamed about it at their core and to blame for it at some level. We are disproportionately represented in the creative arts. So lots of artists and creatives are Enneagram 4s. There are fewer of us in the population, we think, than any other type.
Of course.
You know? Of course, because we're special and unique. Going in a circle again. Here we go, chasing my own tail. So my mom and I were very, very different. Very different. My mom was just a gigantic personality. I mean, she was big. She walked into a room and she didn't just own it, she annexed it. She was a loud, elegant, histrionic, in some ways, personality. We laugh. If you've ever seen the show Arrested Development,
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the character Lucille Bluth, the mother on that show, is kind of like what my mom was like. So Anthony and I were talking actually before we hit record about my mom, and I said, she was so complicated because she at one point, she could be glacial and very formal and big and very domineering. And at the same time, she could be tender and very squishy at the middle and frightened. So, it just reminds me that, human beings are insanely complicated, and things like the Enneagram can give us a low definition picture of the interior world of different kinds of people, but they sure can't account for the whole of the person,
But it gets close. And I think maybe, first of all, as you were sharing about your type and then kind of bringing in your mother's personality, it kind of felt like connected for me, because there was definitely, to use the word invisible, there was something, there is something invisible that you don't have words for within you. But then being raised by a mother that is so larger than life, she definitely maybe not shadowed you, but kind of added to that unlabeled, invisible portion of you.
Yeah, it's like everything in life. I have not resolved, like it's interesting. I said to Anthony right before the show started, right? Like I didn't have a very felt experience of grief about my mom, which is kind of unusual for me. Now, she was 94. The last 3 years of her life was pretty out of it in terms of dementia. So I feel like I lost my mom 3 years before she died, so I feel like there was a gradual kind of rolling loss over time, but I think I'm still trying to put the pieces together about my relationship with her. Probably will until I meet the same end, and
Hey, can I share an insight I'm
please.
getting from how you're sharing? And maybe that's why you have not experienced, to use your words, the felt experience of grieving your mother. I think the way you're talking about her here and the very little we've just met, to me, I get the sense that she's still very much with you in the way that you're processing your reality and your world, that she occupies a big part of who you are today. And there is still a relationship, not only with who she has been to you and in your life, but I would bring it in the present moment to who she is to you and in your life today. And maybe you, when you are in that type of relationship with someone you've lost, it's possible that you're not going to be experiencing what we are being told you're supposed to experience when someone so important has passed away. It's so much more complex than that. And
Yes.
And especially with someone like you, Ian, who tries to understand the world. And if I take the context of the Enneagram and tries to understand the world through additional labels and additional context and help, you're not going to experience what is traditional or expected or whatever is, and we'll talk about
Sure.
that too. But I would go with what you're feeling as the right way to feel for you, because if it was any other way, I don't think it would have been right for your own healing.
Yeah, well, first of all, I've done a lot of therapy around mom. Okay, a lot, because she was a complicated figure who was both attractive an attractive person and repellent at the same time, right? She, I don't throw the word narcissistic. I wouldn't say she was like clinically a narcissist, though she was huge, like as a personality.
Yeah.
And so she did overshadow everybody, you know. I laugh because eights can be like this or a particular type, right? But my mom was not very self-aware, never worked on herself per se. There were parts of my mom that I deeply loved and parts of my mom I deeply resented all at the same time, you know, which is, you know, I don't think is as unusual. But I think I've over the years processed a lot of this stuff. And as a person who does think deeply about the inner world of other people, my own spiritual, emotional, psychological path of transformation and growth, I feel like what I can say is that I forgave my mother for the ways that I think all of us at some point in our relationship with our parents have to do, right?
Yeah.
Like to find some kind of reconciliation in ourselves
Yes.
with like, you know, like this is who they were. And I know that my mom had good intentions, you know, she didn't always deliver on them, but I look at my own, you know, I'm 63 and I have grown children, and I've had to go back and go to them and make amends and apologies and for things that I didn't do well. And I think that's part of getting older and wiser, is to seek out those conversations with your kids, so they don't have questions. You know, like you can just have it out with them, like in a good way. I love this conversation because normally I'm in the driver's seat, and I love that I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're interviewing me about my mom, because I just did a speaking gig this week somewhere for a company, and I tell lots of stories about my mother because there are so many stories about my mother that it's just to give you an idea, Christina. This is what we used to say about my mother. My mother could smoke in a hospital and nobody would stop her. That's the kind of person, you know, just like, wow. Anthony knew my mom. She was crazy, right?
Yeah. I mean, like when Ian tells his stories, it's not an exaggeration.
No, she just was big. She was like, you know, I oftentimes say she was like Katharine Hepburn when she got older. You know, she's just a big, attractive, but also a little bit of a scary personality, you know, like.
Or Betty Davis. Have you ever seen those interviews with Betty Davis?
Yes. Yeah. But my mom was a little warmer than that.
Yeah.
My mom had a pretty good, but yeah, you're right. A little bit like that too. Yeah. That old, she came off. People always said, your mom reminds me of an aging movie star. And that's what she was like.
Well, I just want to say, I love this. I love that Christina turned the tables right off the bat.
I know, like a good caring 8. I love that.
Yes.
Like came in ready to rock.
Yeah, totally. Leaning into that 2 a little bit.
I love it. I'm primed for that.
Yeah.
So,
but
Christina,
Ian, I just want to add, and you know, for everyone who's listening, I deeply believe in being present in a conversation. So, I have as I'm listening to you, I'm asking questions. I'm wondering. I'm curious, and I guess what I want to say to you before we move from your mom is that she couldn't help it being the way she was. I want to say that, and that there was no other way for her to be, and the burden on herself for being who she was also heavy. I want to say that, and I don't know your mom. I never met her, and from the way you describe her, she couldn't escape from this. And I'm getting chills just saying that. She couldn't escape from the grandness of herself, the grand being of her. And when you got to access that, did you say the word squashy, like inner,
like a tender center?
Yes, that's when I think you actually this is when you really saw her and got to know her for who she really was, because that other bigger version of her was heavy for her too.
Yeah, no, I believe that. Like I said, it's a well-timed conversation about grief, because I do think grief takes many forms beyond just the stereotypes we have from TV. And I love that I'm talking to an 8, because, you know, a lot of times we would think that 8s, typically we say, are people who, some variants of them, will assert strength and control over others in the environment in order to mask vulnerability and weakness. And that certainly was my mom. I'm not picking that up with you, though you're appropriately stepping into a role in our conversation that I love. And happily, I feel safe ceding control of the conversation to you, which tells me a lot about you in the short few moments that we've known each other. But I wouldn't think of grief as being the go-to thing for eights to want to talk about.
You're right about that. And that was always the big question as to when I started. I have a master's in counseling, and my thesis was on the stages of grief. I studied in the UK, and before my own tragic events of my life that took my first husband really young, and I had decided and made a decision to study grief in my 20s, and couldn't really understand why, but I knew, and the answer I was giving at the time to my professor was, I love people so much, I could not imagine losing them, and I want to know how to help someone who has experienced something like this, not knowing at the time that just very few years, 2 or 3 years later, my 31-year-old husband was going to be diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer and pass away 3.5 years after that. I could not have imagined. And when that happened, I actually was freaked out by the synchronicity of it and ran away from grief and went back to school and did a postgrad in human resource management and went corporate, and wasn't really finding there what I wanted. And my own experience of grief, of course, as an eight, I wanted to break the rules and create something that doesn't exist, because it was unfair to see so many people suffering. And when I was experiencing my own loss and my own suffering, it did not compare with the truth that I learned through my studies. I was sitting with the dying at hospices before any of my own tragedy. I facilitated support groups with spouses who lost their partners, and did not really understand the magnitude of what it feels like to lose someone who's so important to you. And when that happened, I was angry, I was upset. How could they not have told me? How come nobody tells you that it is impossible? So that's when I made a promise to myself that if I was ever to survive this and thrive, I would go back and get everyone else. And I resigned from that corporate world in 2010 and started this path, which is now 14 years later and 3 books later, having walked by the side of thousands of people's stories all over the world. 2 clinical trials concluded on the model I created to go against everything that was there. And now I find myself, maybe for the first time in a really long time, wanting to, you see, this was always going to be an honest conversation, Ian and Anthony. You know, it's important. Wanting to not run away from this work, but wanting to live for myself, maybe for the first time. And it's been it definitely has been a challenging choice. I feel like the universe keeps sending me these huge successes for the work that I couldn't possibly walk away from, because it's helping. Ultimately, it's going to help, you know, these studies and what happens next, and it's going to help so many people. But I'm hoping that I'm not going to be part of the center of it. That's the plan. And as an eight, and this is why I love having this conversation with you, because I want to learn so much more about what this means. Choosing a different path is challenging, but I know I can do it. And I'm being tested for sure. Like tested for my, like, is it going to be my ambition that wins, or my creativity and my love for, because I also went back to school, and I'm going to be finishing an MFA in painting this next year. I've always wanted to be an artist and gave that up to pursue the grief path because of everything that happened. And before that, I guess it was destined. But I have some similarities to your mom in the way that stepping into any path for me will always create this, I don't want to, the word seismic came, but I am, I am who I am. And I can't help walking into the room in the way that I am every time. And that generates responses and results and moves things and shakes things. So my goal, and I hope I have the courage and I'm brave enough to take that and maneuver it into the art experience and to trust that wherever I go, there I am, and that I will step into that world. And I don't know what's going to happen. I've tried to leave this, but it wouldn't let me. So.
Just a few years ago, only 3% of domestic violence shelters accepted pets, meaning many abuse survivors had to choose between staying in a difficult situation for their pet or leaving their pet behind. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience domestic abuse in their lifetime, and nearly half of survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Purina believes in the healing power of pets, particularly for survivors of abuse. They believe pets and people are better together, which is one of the many reasons they started the Purple Leash Project. Through the Purple Leash Project, Purina is helping break down one of the many barriers abuse survivors face: the lack of pet-friendly domestic violence shelters. Purina has helped increase the amount of pet-friendly shelters across the country from 3% to nearly 20% through the Purple Leash Project. With more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters, survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to get involved.
The following ad is sponsored by Pets Best Insurance Services. Your pet is your bestie. Your therapist, your preferred match. It's easy to love them, even when they sneak your snacks. It's easy to protect them, too, with pet insurance coverage from Pets Best. Because it's all fun and games until they chew on something they shouldn't. With perfect timing, Pets Best helps protect your furry friend and your budget from this imperfect world. Get up to 90% on eligible vet bills for less than $1 a day. Find your perfect match at PetsBest.com. Pet insurance products offered and administered by Pets Best Insurance Services, LLC, are underwritten by American Pet Insurance Company or Independence American Insurance Company. For all terms, visit PetsBest.com/policy.
So I suspect the difference between you and my mom would be this, at the very least. My mom was not a very self-aware person.
Oh, wow.
She did not know really, nor care, that her personality landed with such force on other people. It actually kind of entertained her in a way.
Wow.
Whereas I feel like with you, you have enough emotional, psychological, and spiritual integration and awareness that you can monitor and regulate the way that your personality is landing from moment to moment, so that, good things are coming as a result of your being in the room. It's not just you walking in and pulling your own pin and blowing up and seeing what happens, And my mom just never did that kind of work. She was not of that generation. She wasn't somebody who thought in those categories. She was a very black and white thinker, as eights can often be.
Was she, and I think the generation plus, where did she come from? Was her DNA from, is there any?
Ireland.
You see? That is also key here, Ian. This cultural, there's something, I'm hearing that, yes, she was innate, but there's also other influences that had taken place in your mom.
And very Catholic, though she didn't go to the Catholic Church. Do you know what I mean? But she couldn't rinse Catholicism out of it. I don't mean the healthy side of Catholicism. I mean the not. And there's people who don't know. It's like people say, well, there's Irish Catholics, Italian Catholics. There are really cultural different manifestations of those things, and she was, as eights can be, I think. There was, behind the facade of control and intensity and kind of brimming over too much with passion on other people sometimes, there was anxiety about betrayal. which was a big theme for eights
Yes,
typically,
there is. I agree.
Like, oh, are you going to betray me? Are you going to screw me? I always tell eights all the time, I'm always like, look, just because you feel like you're being screwed doesn't mean you're being screwed. It just means that you worry about being screwed a lot. Right. So like, don't react in this moment because you're just maybe picking up on betrayal that's not here. She was excessive, right? So my mom smoked for 75 years. She wasn't a heavy drinker, but she liked to drink. She loved to eat. She loved to dance. She loved to travel. She overdid everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was very much like Zorba the Greek. You know, that kind of personality
I am
style?
Greek, so yes, I definitely know that.
So Kazantzakis, that archetype.
I can't believe, and also I don't have the smoking, dancing, loudness in that way at all. Nothing. I actually, and I don't drink. I there's a muting of some sort that's probably coming from some other influence. There's more quiet. It was quiet version of innate, but but because of that, people are shocked when I'm always the underdog again. They don't see me coming, and that's hard. Like when you guys reached out to Addison for the appeal, you responded that you would be interested in interviewing and asking me about my Enneagram. So I told Addie, she said, "What number are you? They want to know." And I said, 8. She goes, "I can't believe it."
She thought you were 2?
She didn't know. She didn't think I was an 8. She did not. Yeah. She could not, because I was not reacting as an 8. And I said to her, first of all, my relationship with them was so great, and I trusted what they were doing so much that I didn't feel like I had to take control. But even if I wasn't trusting, I think people don't see me coming at all, because there's a quietness.
Yes.
That is translated as maybe not, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm also from another country. I have an accent. Like, they don't get it, that maybe at first, but then it's shocking and surprising always.
Yeah. Well, not all 8s are extroverted.
Yeah,
right?
I would say I'm an introvert. Yeah.
And though stereotypically people think of them as always being extroverted and big and loud,
and people would
but
think,
they're not.
People actually, if they see me in a social context and I talk and I laugh and I'm here, but ultimately I have to recharge alone for hours afterwards because it was too much for me. It's too much.
Yeah. So this actually points out something beautiful about 8s, which is like there's like variations on a theme, and that's true of all types, right? And however, I will say that I've never met an 8 that didn't carry like they're running on 240 volts. Like, I do. You have 200. Like, you're probably tireless.
Yes.
You
Relentless.
Are someone who has.
I don't give up.
Right. You probably have difficulty seeing physical limitations sometimes.
And I burned out. Like, for example, it's so spot on, Ian, because like my husband would try to stop me from working as hard as I was working, because I couldn't understand the amount of work that I was putting into all these years with working with so many people was too much for me, until it was too late. Like, I collapsed. I don't see my limitations. That's exactly right. Very well said.
Yeah. If you're an 8, you typically value directness in your relationships with other people a lot. Look at you smiling. Yes.
This is why this is like this. And in every conversation I have, when it's not like this, I don't want to be in it at all.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, because there's no juice.
Nothing. Right? There's no point. It's a waste of my time. What's the point in not being direct with each other? Mm-hmm. What are we going to get from this if it's not reality and truth?
Yes. So you probably don't like people who flip-flop back and forth on things, waffling around. You probably are somebody that, if you're an 8, that you don't necessarily seek out confrontation, but you definitely don't back out when it presents itself.
Especially if it's, I'm an activist. If I'm fighting for something that is, someone has done something that's not fair and it's all right, forget it. Like, if animals, people who are not being helped, like, I would throw myself in front of a train just to help. Like, it's extreme. I don't think it's impulsive. It's too much. It takes away my own life. So, and I feel it like if I'm watching a movie that there's any form of unfairness, violence of any kind, something's happening to a character that's loved, I cannot watch it. I will fast forward.
Mm-hmm.
You sound very eight-ish to me. And part of what the dynamic there is, we think with eights, at least what eights tell me from their own experiences, that because they have spent a long time denying weakness and vulnerability in themselves, that when they see it in another person, there's a kind of projection that goes on.
Yes.
And it's like by rescuing or protecting the weak and vulnerable, I'm kind of protecting myself.
My goodness, Ian. Yep. It's exactly right. And there's a lot of projection, and it's intense, and it's a lot, and it's busy, and it's all the time. And can you ever switch off an eight a little bit? I have percentages, really high percentages in other types as well, by the way. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, what are your other? Yeah, I'm just curious what the other ones were.
Let me see. I came prepared, more or less. Okay, so I am type 4, the individualist. I'm 83%.
Mm-hmm.
Type 5, the investigator. I'm 83%.
Interesting.
The challenger, I'm 100%. 67%. And then it goes down. The achiever, 67%. The helper, 67%. Perfectionist, 50%.
Yeah. Well, another interesting thing for you to do, if you choose to go down the Enneagram sort of like self-discovery, like just as a tool for self-discovery, you also might check out, there's a type called a 1-to-1-4.
1-to-1-4?
Yeah, sometimes called a sexual 4. And it doesn't have to do with like sexuality. It has to do with a primary instinct, right? Because you have a 4 and a 5 that are close, and sometimes sexual or 1-to-1-4s, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Can look 8-ish. So just, sometimes it takes a while to dial
get
in
it
type.
right. So you saying I have a strong 4, and it may be that's shadowed by the traits that resemble an 8.
Yeah. So in other words, you may be a 1-to-1-4. I don't know, but you could be. You feel very 8-ish to me.
Yes, I do. I know.
But sometimes a 1-to-1-4 presents in a very they can be very, and you're interested in art, and the fact that you have a high 5 score in the list means that I would, if I were interviewing you to figure out your type with you, I would be sort of intrigued, and I would want to rule out that you weren't a 1-to-1-4. So read up on 1-to-1-4s, and Beatrice Chestnut has a good book called The Complete Enneagram.
I'm going to get that book, because it's when I saw that I was an 8, it was like, yep, it was immediate.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But then the struggle to say yes to the creative aspect of me, which is the art, which is, by the way, a very big part of me. This is when I'm the happiest. There's nothing that can compare, or like I am, and I spend many hours painting a day.
And here's another thing to think about. Any type can be an artist.
Any type can be an artist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, any type can be an artist. So every type, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
There's tons of 1 artist and 5 artists and 6 artists and 7 artists. So it is not the sole purview of 4s to be the artists. They're just disproportionately represented, because 4s typically you don't strike me as having a labile emotional expression. Like you don't strike me as someone who has super highs and super lows, at least not in our conversation.
It's the same. I'm intense all the time, Ian.
Yeah, right. So exactly. So 4s tend to be, particularly when they're younger, like really labile in their mood and emotional expression and intensity. Yeah, I would just check it out just for and it's just good to learn about all the other types, and know like how different we are. I think as a therapist, you'll go, oh, this is useful. Yeah, it's just another model. It's useful. And it's a great doorway into conversation with people about their inner architecture.
The following ad is sponsored by Pets Best Insurance Services. Your pet is your bestie. Your therapist, your preferred match. It's easy to love them, even when they sneak your snacks. It's easy to protect them, too, with pet insurance coverage from Pets Best. Because it's all fun and games until they chew on something they shouldn't. With perfect timing, Pets Best helps protect your furry friend and your budget from this imperfect world. Get up to 90% on eligible vet bills for less than $1 a day. Find your perfect match at PetsBest.com. Pet insurance products offered and administered by Pets Best Insurance Services, LLC, are underwritten by American Pet Insurance Company or Independence American Insurance Company. For all terms, visit PetsBest.com/policy.
And you're prepared to understand someone, like you inviting your guests, and their Enneagram before they sit down. I would love to know, it's amazing to have this knowing about someone
Yes.
without meeting them. It feels safe to me. It feels like, and that's why immediately I wanted to know, what are you? I want to know.
Yes.
I want to know what about you, Anthony? What number are you?
I'm a 4 as well.
You are a 4. Yeah. Wow. How does that work?
But we are different types of 4s.
Yeah. How is that?
So
did you know, Ian? I don't know your history. Were you friends before you worked together?
Yes.
Did you know that you guys were both 4s from the beginning?
No. When we first met, I wasn't doing Enneagram work.
Yeah.
And that came, a couple of years into our relationship that I wrote a book about it, and, off we went to the races, But I would say that though Anthony and I have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, I think. I'm probably a little bit more, I think I'm more image conscious than Anthony is. I think I'm more, I probably worry more about what others think about me than he does. Although I've come a long way on that, but I'm aware that that's kind of a part of me that I need to keep up in my sight, so it doesn't become problematic.
But Ian, you also don't, by the way. This is how you come across to me. You do care, but you also don't care.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
I have the sense like you definitely, for sure, you want to make sure that, you show up in a specific way, but there's also this nonverbal message I'm getting from you also that feels really healthy, that says, it is what it is, take it or leave it. This is me. This is who I am.
Yeah. I think that's the gift of having gotten older.
And I would say even though you have, you talk about caring what other people think, you're never comfortable with that about yourself. You know what I mean, Ian? You're aware of it and you're not comfortable with that.
Yeah. Well, I just, I keep an eye on it so that I don't end up compromising who I am in service to winning people over.
Yeah.
And I think also, and people know this about me on the show, I'm in 12-step recovery for alcohol and drug addiction. And so that model, that program for living, which is separate from the Enneagram, has also made me someone that has had to look carefully at my inner world and own what's not so great and also own what is beautiful at the same time.
Yes.
So good shadow work.
Yes.
I've had to do good shadow work. So I actually owe a lot to, I would say as a 4, that one thing that is true is that, and by the way, both Anthony and I are songwriters. So that was actually my first job, was really as an artist.
Wow.
And as a writer, I think like an art, I don't think about writing content. I think a lot about good writing, like about being a good writer.
Yes.
Like the art of writing is really important to me. And I'm very persnickety and very, I drive myself hard to write good sentences and to capture ideas in good stories. And so, yeah, I feel like I've been blessed with the 12 steps in my community that surrounds me and helps me to live as the highest expression of who I am all the time, and, but I deeply, deeply care about relationships and helping people plumb the depths of who they are and of their experience so that they can get as much meaning and understanding about what this life means to them. That is what, when I go out to do speaking engagements for companies and stuff like that, that's what lights me up. When I see the lights go on in someone's head, eyes, and they go, oh, that's why. And that new level of self-awareness and self-knowledge and self-discovery has led them to a deeper appreciation of just what a profound, beautiful mystery it is that we are here, and that we get to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow toward becoming people who are clear, connected, compassionate, kind, generative, giving, all the stuff that I hope for. Except that I'm a 4 who loves to talk about himself. I just want to remind everybody that we're speaking with our new friend, Christina Rasmussen, author of the new book, Invisible Loss, Recognizing and Healing the Unacknowledged Heartbreak of Everyday Grief. Wow. We're going to have you back on, because my brain is like digging around on, we haven't even got to internal family systems yet. Listen, everybody, please go out and check out and hit the buy button on Christina Rasmussen's new book, Invisible Loss, Recognizing and Healing the Unacknowledged Heartbreak of Everyday Grief. And as always, my loved ones, may you have love, may you have joy, may you have peace, may you have healing, and may you have rest. Until next time.